capital city, Havana, is not an easy place to age. On the one hand are the fruits of socialism, excellent health, a crocodile every small gathering, 100% education at all levels available to all. Shops and the five-star hotels. And the fancy designed for the foreign tourists and the diplomatic and to which the local Cubans have no access whatsoever. President Fidel Castro responds to these observations in the course of this conversation.
You are the longest lasting leader. You have been now in power as 31 years. So, you know, like, if you sort of...
There are several others. Kim Il-sung from Korea.
Ya estaba en la dirección de Corea.
He's been there longer than me.
Kim Il-sung, now that you're talking about Kim Il-sung,
Cierto, y ahora que
there
usted
are
menciona
very
Kim
few
Il-sung,
leaders left in the world who speak your vocabulary.
No eran muchos más.
there are not many others.
No eran muchos más.
There were not so many anyway.
Unos cuantos,
Just a
5 o 6 en
few.
Europa,
5 or 6 in Europe,
donde los cambios que se han producido
where
no
the
son
changes
iguales
which have taken place are not the same
en todos.
in every country.
Pero nunca fueron más de los países del cambio.
But the countries of Comic-Con, for instance, there were never so
Fueron más
many.
de 12 o 14 países.
There were never more than a
Y
dozen.
estaba Vietnam,
And there you had Vietnam,
estaba Campuchea,
Cambodia,
Laos
Laos,
y los de Europa. Así que
and the
nunca
Eastern
fueron
Europe.
muchos.
So there were never too many.
Do you believe, you really sincerely believe, that socialism as you have organized in your country is capable of bringing to the people all the accoutrements of good living without major reforms? Because I have observed in the last 4 days enormous queues at pizzerias.
Enormes colas en las pizzerías.
Foodstuffs in amazing shortage.
Enorme escasez de productos alimenticios.
A humiliating disparity between the dollar shop and the
Una
ration shop.
disparidad realmente humillante entre las tiendas que venden en dólares y las tiendas para cubanos.
And those, I believe, are the weaknesses that have got to be.
Son las debilidades que habría que
Claro,
enfrentar.
pero eso fue lo único que vio.
Was that the only thing you saw?
Vio limosneros por las calles,
Did you find any beggars in the streets?
vio personas desamparadas,
Did you see helpless people in the streets?
vio niños sin escuela,
Did you see children without schools?
vio,
I said that.
vio prostitución,
Did you see prostitution?
vio
Did you
juegos en
see
las calles,
gambling,
casinos,
casinos?
todas esas cosas. Entonces vio borrachos en las
Did you
calles.
see drunken people
Fenómeno
around
del
the
alcoholismo.
streets? People
Ninguna de
victims
esas
of
cosas
alcoholism?
realmente
Those evils
visto en otro-
we do not have.
Puede haber colas en las tiendas.
There may be queues in the
Únicamente
shops.
porque hay productos.
Actually,
Versus.
y la vivienda,
Sí.
dice también.
Puede haber colas
There may be queues
tiendas.
in the shops
porque hay productos que escasean.
because we have scarcity of products.
El problema de que las tiendas
The problems
tengan muchos productos.
of the shops having many products.
Es cuestión
It's a matter
de una contradicción
of a contradiction
entre los productos que están en las tiendas
between the products in the shops
y la cantidad de dinero que tiene la
and the amount of money that people have.
Si nosotros hiciéramos lo que se hace en otros productos
If we were to do
y pusiéramos 20
what is
libras
done in other
todos los
countries, y pudiéramos,
productos, 20 libras
and we would
todos los
have
productos,
all the products sold out of the ration
y elevábamos los precios,
only by raising the prices,
se acaban todas esas colas
you would have no more queues.
y se acaban las escaseces.
And then you would not have a scarcity of many
Lo que
products.
ocurre es que nosotros
What
tenemos un
happens
sistema,
is that we have a system
de normación.
of distribution by a
Si
ration
nosotros le
card.
garantizamos a cada niño
I mean, we guarantee to every child
1 litro de leche
1
diario.
bottle of milk a day.
Nosotros distribuimos alimentos.
So actually,
Para
we distribute
13
food
millones y medio de
for
personas,
13 and a
casi para
half million
14
people,
millones.
almost 14 million people.
Y somos
And we are
el país del tercer mundo
the country in the third world
con menos gente desnutrida.
with less undernourished
Ustedes
people.
no se encontrarían un
You will
hambriento.
not find somebody
Un
going
desnutrido.
hungry or somebody who is
En nuestra
undernourished.
sociedad no se
In our
conoce el
society,
desnutrido,
we do not know the undernourished
porque es que todo el mundo tiene la oportunidad
because
de
everybody has the
alimentarse.
chance to be well fed.
Ahora, sobre lo que usted dice de las tiendas,
Now, about what you say about the
nosotros
shops,
tenemos tiendas de turismo,
we have shops for tourism,
tiendas para extranjeros,
shops for foreigners,
fundamentalmente, diplomáticos,
diplomats,
turistas extranjeros
tourists, foreign
que
tourists
vienen al país.
who come to our country,
Y en algunos casos de
and in some
nacionales,
cases
por ejemplo, trabajadores
of nationals.
de la
For
Marina
instance,
Mercante,
workers from the merchant marine,
de la flota aérea,
from the
que disponen de algunos recursos moneda
air
convertible.
fleet to have
Tienen
some
derecho a comprar en
hard
algunas
currency
tiendas,
because
pero
of their work,
solamente
and they have the right to buy in
trabajadores
some shops. Some
que tienen
only
relaciones para que no
those
compren en
workers,
el exterior
so that they do not use their hard currency
y lo que
abroad,
vayan a comprar
and whatever they buy,
lo
they buy it
compren.
here, and the hard currency remains in the country.
Son tiendas para extranjeros
What we have are mainly shops
que
for
existen
foreigners,
con el objeto de buscar
which
un
exist
ingreso
with the
para el
purpose
país.
of gaining hard currency
Moneda
for the
convertible
country.
para-
I don't think there is any
Puesto que nosotros
dishonorable
no
with
tenemos
them,
mares de petróleo,
because we do not have
grandes recursos.
oceans of oil, we don't have large
nosotros tenemos
resources.
que trabajar muy
We
duro.
have to work very
Y
hard
nuestro problema es
for every penny,
La
and one of
moneda
our
convertible.
problems is the hard currency. which
Your
remains
not
available.
having sufficient hard currency is one of the weaknesses where socialism has got to be reformed.
Pero el no tener suficiente moneda dura, creo que esa es una de las cosas que el socialismo es débil y que tiene que corregir.
bueno. Una de las cosas de no tener moneda de
Well,
razón
one
a
of the
tener
reasons
moneda
for not
dura
having hard currency
es porque
is,
son varias las razones.
I mean, there are several reasons
Varias.
for which we do not have
Pero
hard currency.
una de ellas porque invierte el
But
dinero,
one of them is because we invest the money.
no lo guarda,
We do not keep it in the bank,
sino lo invierte en el
but
desarrollo.
we use it for development. That's
Porque
why.
nosotros podemos decir
Because we could say
que, los recursos
that
financieros
the financial
hay que
resources
invertirlo en el desarrollo.
ought to be invested for development.
Otro, los
That's our
países
premise.
socialistas
Something else, the
no
socialist
tienen
countries
crédito del Fondo
do not have
Monetario,
countries do not receive
del
credits
Banco
from
Mundial.
the IMF or the World Bank,
tercero,
or
porque el mundo capitalista
also because the
desarrollado
capitalist developed world
atesora todo el oro
accumulates all the
y todo el
gold
dinero del mundo.
and all the money in the world.
Quinto,
Fourth, because
ningún país del tercer mundo
no
tiene
country
dinero,
of the third world has money,
sea capitalista o
be it
sea
capitalist or be it socialist.
socialista. A mí me parecería
It seemed to me
raro
strange
que un país socialista
that a
tuviera mucho
socialist
dinero
country would have
convertible,
much money, much hard currency,
mucho dinero convertible, porque señal de que lo
because that would be
está malgastando.
a reason to expect that it
Si
is
tuviera el
misusing
dinero
it.
para estar comprando
If we had
bisutería,
money to buy just these kind of
para estar
luxurious
comprando
items
perfume,
and
estar
to buy
comprando cosas
bijouterie and,
no esenciales
and
para la vida.
perfumes,
Why are you so much against perfumes?
¿Y por qué ustedes están en contra de los
No, yo estoy a favor de los perfumes.
I'm in favor of perfumes.
Yo estoy a favor y nosotros hacemos perfumes.
And we produce perfumes.
No, sí.
Yes, we do.
Traemos materia prima.
So what is
Desarrollamos, pero le quiero
We
decir,
developed that, but I mean to say,
pero no es de París el perfume.
these are not Paris perfumes.
No vino de París.
They do not come from Paris. We produce
Es un
them.
perfume hecho por nosotros.
It's a house.
Bastante bueno,
It's a good perfume that we
pero quizás
produce,
no compita
quite
con
good,
el de
but
París.
perhaps it do not compete
No
with the
tenemos
Paris
dinero para comprar
perfumes.
perfume de París.
We do not have money to buy
Yo digo
perfumes
que
in
el
Paris.
perfume nos gusta todo. Yo no lo
We
uso.
all like perfumes. I don't
Pero
wear
nos agrada que
them,
otros
but we
lo-
like for other people to wear perfumes,
Y sobre todo,
to carry
nos
perfumes.
agrada
Why
que las
not?
mujeres usen
And we
y-
like for women
Pero
to have perfumes,
primero hay que vestirla.
but first they have to be dressed.
Garantizarle
To
el
guarantee
vestido,
the
el
garments,
alimento.
the
Hay que
food.
garantizarle el alimento,
First we have to
la
guarantee the
salud.
food, the health,
Entonces yo puedo decir en nuestro país,
and then I
no
can say
tenemos
in our
perfume de
country
París,
we don't have Paris
pero tenemos
perfumes from
menos
Paris,
sida que París.
but we have less AIDS
Y tenemos
than
mejor
Paris,
salud que París.
and we have better health than they have in Paris.
What is the difference between socialism and communism?
¿Y cuál es la diferencia entre el socialismo y el comunismo?
Because Sweden says they are socialists.
Porque
So,
Suecia dice que es socialista.
En Suecia hay un sistema
In Sweden they
capitalista.
have a capitalist system.
Eso no lo niegan ni los suecos.
Not even the Swedish can say otherwise.
Hay un partido socialista,
They have a socialist party,
pero hay un país
but they have a
capitalista.
capitalist country.
También en España hay
Also
un
in
partido
Spain they have a
socialista
socialist
y
party
un país capitalista.
in a capitalist country.
En Francia hay un
And in
partido
France
socialista
they have a socialist
y
party
un país supercapitalista.
and a super capitalist country.
Vamos a estar jugando ahora con las
Are we
palabras.
going to play games with words?
Suecia.
Now
en
Sweden,
Suecia,
in Sweden,
lo que hay es una mejor
what they have,
redistribución
it's a
de la
better
riqueza
distribution of wealth,
que en otros
better
países
than in
capitalistas.
other capitalist countries.
Suecia pudiéramos decir que
We
uno de
could
los
say that
países
Sweden is one
capitalistas más ricos,
of the wealthier
pero
capitalist
también
countries,
uno de los países capitalistas
but also one of the capitalist
con un
countries
mejor sistema de
with a better
distribución de la riqueza
distribution of
y de
wealth
protección a la
and a better system of protection of the population.
it is, in other words, it is a capitalist country
En
by
otras
your
palabras,
definition without the
según su
evils of
definición.
capitalism.
¿Sí?
What is wrong with that?
Yo digo que es un
Entonces,
país
¿qué
capitalista.
qué hay de malo entonces con
compacto,
ese sistema?
Es un país,
Sir, are you
es
being
un país
dogmatic?
capitalista con parte de los problemas
It is a
del
capitalist
capitalismo
country with
y
part
de
of
los
the problems of
problemas del
capitalism and the problems of
La
capitalism.
desigualdad en la distribución de la
Inequality in the
riqueza
distribution of wealth
es
is
una de las
there.
características de
It is one of the characteristics of
En Suecia
capitalism.
puede haber un pordiosero.
In Sweden you
Yo
may
no
have
sé,
beggars. I don't know if
porque
they
no he estado
do,
en Suecia.
because I
No
have
sé
not
si
been
hay
to
o
Sweden.
no
I
un
do not know
pordiosero.
whether they have them or not. I have
No
not
sé
been
si
there.
hay o no un desempleo.
I do not know whether they have high unemployment or
No
not.
sé
I have
si
not
hay o
been
no
there.
alguna gente,
I do not know whether they have
Desamparada.
some
pero sé que hay gente que
helpless
tiene 6
people.
millones
But I know there are people who have 6
y
million
otros que no tienen
and
100
people
millones,
who do not have 100
que
million.
tienen su salario.
People who have their
Ingresos.
salaries, their incomes.
Suecia es un islote capitalista.
Sweden
porque
is
además,
a capitalist island, I would say.
no es una regla,
It is not a rule.
es una excepción.
It is an exception to the rule.
Porque ellos viven allá en el norte.
Because they live up there in the north.
Han tenido el privilegio
They have had the privilege
de ser neutrales
of being neutrals
durante mucho tiempo.
for a long time.
No han sido destruidos por ninguna
They
guerra.
have not been devastated by a war.
No han participado en ninguna de
They
las
have not been
guerras
involved
en los últimos,
in any war
qué sé yo, 150 años.
in the last
No recuerdo
150
el dato
years.
exacto. Y naturalmente se ha
And
desarrollado.
of course it has been able to develop.
Potencia colonial
Sweden, not having been a colonial power,
hubiera sido el ejemplo de todo el resto del mundo.
if it had been an example for the rest of Europe,
Este mundo
for the
sería
rest of the
diferente.
world, this world would be a different world
Capitalismo, ya le
today.
dije,
But as I said, capitalism
creó el colonialismo
created
y
colonialism
creó al neocolonialismo.
and created colonialism.
Eso lo creó el
These
capitalismo.
have been creations
Bueno.
of capitalism.
El mundo sería diferente.
The world would be different without
El mundo
them.
sería diferente sin
The
el
world would be
saqueo
different
que somos
without the
víctimas.
plundering of which we are victims today.
Y estamos muy lejos de ese
And
mundo
we are very
ideal.
far from that idealistic
Yo no me
world.
atrevería a ir
And I would
a
dare
Etiopía
go to Ethiopia
o a Tanzania
or Tanzania
a decirle, mire Suecia,
and said to them, look at
No
Sweden.
pierdan la esperanza.
Do not lose your hopes.
Sigan el ejemplo
Look
de
at Sweden
Suecia.
and follow in the steps.
Sigan el camino de
And
Suecia.
follow the steps of
Y un día llegarán a
Sweden.
ser como
And
Suecia.
one day you will be like Sweden.
Es una utopía.
I wouldn't dare go there and say that. You know, it is a utopia.
I think what you need to do
Yo creo que lo que ustedes necesitan hacer
is Fidel Castro
es Fidel Castro
and the Swedish system, a kind of marriage.
alguna especie de arreglo entre estos dos sistemas. We have some things that not even the Swedish have.
Estamos en algunos campos.
In some
avanzando
fields we have advanced,
muchísimo.
and
Pero
we're
en el
advancing a
campo de la
great
medicina
deal.
estamos avanzando
I
más
think
que
that in the
Suecia.
field of medicine we are advancing more than Sweden.
Creo que en el campo
I
del
think that in the
deporte
field of sports
estamos por encima de Suecia.
we are ranking higher than Sweden.
Creo que en el campo
I think that in the
de
field of
la educación
education,
estamos tan bien o mejor que Suecia.
we are just like Sweden or perhaps better because we are doing many
Nos
things.
proyectamos hacia
Essentially, we are projecting ourselves
creo
to
que
the
somos una
future.
sociedad mucho más
I
equitativa,
think we are a more equitable society
mucho más justa.
and a fair society.
Y somos mucho, aunque somos mucho más pobres que
And though we
Suecia,
are poorer than Sweden,
tenemos más de 1000 médicos
we have more than 1,000 doctors
trabajando en los países
working
del tercer mundo.
in the third world nations.
Tenemos miles de gente
We have
trabajando.
thousands of people working.
Practicamos el
We
internacionalismo,
practice
no
internationalism,
con dinero, como
not
no
with
tenemos
money
dinero,
because we do not have it,
pero con nuestro sudor,
but with our own
con
sweat,
nuestro esfuerzo,
with our
con nuestra
efforts,
inteligencia,
with our
en
intelligence,
ocasiones también,
and
hasta
sometimes
con nuestra propia sangre,
even with our own blood.
hemos ayudado a la liberación
We
de
have
otros
helped in the
países.
liberation
De manera que
of
tenemos
other
muchas
nations.
cosas, muchos valores
So we have many
que no
values
tienen que envidiarle a los valores de Suecia.
that we do not have to envy the Swedish.
The non-aligned movement was conceived as a way, as a group between two blocks.
Como un grupo separado de los dos bloques.
Now the two blocks are coming
Ahora
together.
los dos bloques se han acercado, se han unido.
What role is there
Me
for the
pregunto,
non-aligned?
¿qué papel queda entonces al movimiento no
Has it now
alineados?
become a north-south
Me
issue
pregunto si ahora no se ha convertido más bien en un problema norte-sur
and non-aligned has lost its relevance?
y un momento en norte-sur en que los no alineados han perdido su relevancia.
Mire, el movimiento no alineado surge como
Look, the non-aligned movement
un movimiento independiente de los,
was
de los
created
dos bloques en
as a
medio de la
movement
guerra.
independent from the two blocks in the midst of the Cold War.
Pero el movimiento no alineado
But the non-aligned movement
no era un movimiento neutral.
was not a neutral movement.
Un movimiento que luchó mucho
The
contra
non-aligned
el
movement fought against colonialism.
luchó
It fought
y apoyó
and it supported
en todas partes el movimiento de liberación.
the liberation movements everywhere.
El movimiento
It supported
de los no alineados apoyó la independencia, la
the
soberanía de los
independence
países.
and the sovereignty of the
El
nations.
movimiento de no alineados
The non-aligned movement
apoyó casi todas las causas
supported
justas del mundo.
almost every just
Podía ser
cause
a los
in this
luchadores
world,
de Sudáfrica
be it the
contra el
fighters of
apartheid,
South Africa against apartheid,
podía ser
be it
el pueblo palestino
the
por la
Palestinian people
recuperación
fighting for the recovery
de su estado,
of its
la
state,
recuperación de los territorios
of
ocupados,
the occupied territories.
el movimiento de los no alineados
The non-aligned movement
combatió toda política
fought
de intervención
against
como regla.
all policies of intervention. As a rule, it did so.
El gran número de esas cuestiones
A large
siempre
number
se-
of these matters are present
Yo
today.
pienso que ahora
And I
necesitamos un
believe
movimiento
that
de no
now,
alineados más que nunca.
more than ever, we need the non-aligned movement.
Cualesquiera que sean los problemas que puedan
Whatever
surgir
the problems
de
which could emerge
inmediato,
on a short-term basis
debido a toda esta situación de
due
confusión
to all this situation of
que
confusion
reina en el mundo.
which prevails in today's world,
Debemos hacer el máximo
we
esfuerzo
should do the utmost
por salvar,
to
por
save,
preservar
to
y
preserve,
fortalecer
and to
el
strengthen
movimiento de países no
the
alineados.
non-aligned movement,
Es una fuerza que
since it is a strength which we badly need.
y si era importante
And if it
cuando
was
los bloques estaban
necessary
enfrentados,
when the blocks were
es todavía más
conflicting each
importante
other, it is even more
cuando
important
los
now
bloques
when the two blocks have come closer,
o cuando los bloques
or
pueden
when the
desaparecer
blocks
como bloques.
could even disappear as blocks.
You had always maintained that the Soviet Union was a natural ally of the
Usted
non-aligned.
siempre ha sostenido que la Unión Soviética era un aliado natural.
The Soviet Union is now with the United States building a new structure of peace. Where does that leave your natural allies theory?
¿Dónde deja esto a su teoría sobre la Unión Soviética
No.
como aliado natural?
No es que yo tuviera esa teoría.
It is not that I sustain that
Yo
theory.
lo que decía que los países
What I said
socialistas,
was that the socialist countries were natural allies.
sí, a lo natural,
Yes, I call it like that. Natural
países
allies
del
of the third world
Es lo que yo
nations.
quise decir.
That was what I said.
pero eso fue una expresión que
But
yo
that was
utilicé
an expression I used
cuando ciertos
when
políticos reaccionaron
certain reactionary politicians
dentro del movimiento de no alineado.
within the non-aligned movement,
Porque llegó un momento que el movimiento no alineado
because I ought to say that there was a time in which the non-aligned movement expanded too
comprendió
much
a casi todos los
and it
países.
comprised almost every country.
Fue con una idea que prevaleció
It was an idea which prevailed
en un momento determinado.
at a given moment.
Y entró todo el mundo.
And then everybody became a
Y entre
member,
ellos, algunas neocolonias.
and among them some neo-colonies
Entre
became part of the
ellos,
movement.
algunos estados que respondían a los
Some
intereses
states
de
which responded to the interests of the United States became part of the
Entonces
movement.
se desataban
Then certain
ciertas campañas anticomunistas
anti-communist campaigns were
y
unleashed,
ciertas campañas antisoviéticas
as well as certain anti-Soviet
que
campaigns,
a mí no me parecían justas.
which did not seem fair to me.
Now that the two blocks are coming together,
Pero ahora que los dos bloques se
what
acercan,
should the third world countries do now?
Los dos bloques juntos.
you say the two blocks coming together.
Hay dos grandes potencias
I think there are two big powers
que tienen contradicciones
which have
y
contradictions,
seguramente las van a seguir teniendo.
and I am sure they will continue to have those
Creo que se ha
contradictions.
producido un matrimonio
I don't think there has been a marriage
entre esas dos grandes
between
potencias.
those two
Digo,
big powers.
ha habido un acercamiento.
Es solamente un affair, un flirteo.
No me preocupa eso,
I'm not worried about that, you know.
que disminuyen los peligros de guerra mundial.
If the world dangers of a war
Alegra.
are reduced, we're happy.
Si acaban con todas las armas químicas,
If they put an end to all the chemical
nos
weapons,
alegramos. Si acaban
we are
con
happy.
todas las armas
If they
nucleares,
destroy all the nuclear
nos
weapons,
alegramos.
we are
Y si
happy.
acaban con todas las armas,
If
a
they
ver,
remove
atacar
every
las flechas,
weapon, even the arrows,
entonces nos alegramos.
then we are
No
happy.
ponemos.
We do not oppose
Si el
that.
resultado de esas
We do not oppose that the
discusiones
result of those discussions is peace.
Si estuvieran dispuestos a colaborar
If they were
en un
willing to
programa
cooperate in a program
de desarrollo de los países del tercer
for the
mundo,
development of the third world nations, I would be
las
happy.
preocupaciones que tenemos son otras.
We have a different type of
En este
concern.
momento la URSS se ha debilitado
At this point in time, the Soviet Union has been weakened
como gran potencia.
as a big power.
Eso nos preocupa. Que el
That
campo socialista
worries
se ha
us.
debilitado.
The socialist camp has been
El
weakened.
campo socialista del este de Europa prácticamente
The socialist camp in Eastern Europe is practically no longer there.
Nos preocupa.
That worries
Nos preocupa
us.
que la Unión Soviética tiene dificultades
We are worried that
serias,
the Soviet Union has
problemas económicos
serious
y políticos
economic
que
and
resolver
political difficulties which it has to confront in order to be able to guarantee its soundness and its
Eso es lo que
development.
nos preocupa de
That
esta
is what
situación.
worries us about this situation.
No una búsqueda común de la paz,
We are not worried about a common search for peace by the big powers.
potencia,
That is
sino que nos preocupa que una de esas
good.
grandes
We are worried that
potencias
one of those two
debilitadas,
big powers
está
has been
atravesando problemas
weakened.
muy difíciles,
It is undergoing very difficult
que en
problems,
vez de un mundo
and that instead
bipolar
of a bipolar world,
vayamos a tener
we might be facing
un mundo unipolar
a one-polar
bajo
world
la hegemonía de Estados
under the hegemony of the United
Unidos.
States.
Eso sería terrible para todos.
That would be terrible for all of our countries.
Porque el imperio romano
It would be like the Roman Empire.
sería el papel de
I
las
think we
Naciones
should try to strengthen the role of the United Nations.
Una de ellas
That is one of the institutions the third world countries belong to.
es un instrumento donde
The United Nations is an institution where we constitute a majority.
que esa institución
Because I believe that that institution, the United Nations, requires to be democratized in its democracy, because I think that the right to veto, it's one of the most irritating privileges and one untenable privilege.
Talked about the superpowers, and we've talked about the changes in Eastern Europe. You know, we have not really taken an interest in China. You have said nothing on China. In fact, I believe you are undertaking a visit to China very soon.
Sin embargo, creo que usted muy pronto va a hacer un viaje a China.
Bueno, es bastante inadecuado o incorrecto.
It would be quite inadequate or incorrect to become the judge of others.
E incluso en juez de los amigos.
And so much so to become the judge of friends.
Los chinos son
The Chinese
amigos nuestros.
are our friends.
Yo pienso que no hay dos países iguales,
I think that not two countries are equal,
ni dos circunstancias iguales,
nor two circumstances are
ni
alike,
dos revoluciones,
nor two revolutions can be
y
considered
nosotros a lo
alike.
largo
And
de estos 30
in the course of these
y un año,
31 years,
en cierto momento hemos tenido
at a certain time,
diferencias políticas
we had
con los chinos,
political differences with the Chinese,
o contradicciones.
or rather contradictions with them.
Yo creo que estas contradicciones se originaron
I think that the
fundamentalmente
sources of those contradictions
por el desgraciado hecho de la división del
are to be
movimiento.
found in the unfortunate division of the communist movement.
La división del movimiento comunista.
When there was a vociferous situation in the communist
Los
movement,
problemas surgieron entre la URSS.
I mean the problems between China and the Soviet Union,
Esto dio lugar a la división de
that gave birth to the division of almost all communist parties and all the leftist forces in the
Creo que
world.
eso hizo mucho
I
daño.
think that was very harmful, and I do not know when conditions would be appropriate
Para un viaje largo
for me to make such a long trip,
y relativamente prolongado.
and a relatively long trip.
Fíjese que para viajar a China
Look that to travel to
no puedo
China,
pasar sobre Estados Unidos,
I cannot overfly the United
no
States.
puedo volar sobre el Pacífico,
I cannot overfly the
tengo que
Pacific,
buscar otra ruta.
so I would have to find a different
Por el
route
este,
to the
el
east.
camino a China se hace
So the route to
dos veces
China
más.
becomes twice as long.
So what happened in Tiananmen Square, for instance? Was that unfortunate?
Bueno, precisamente esos son los problemas que yo
Well,
explico,
such are the problems that they explain,
del descontento que
the
origina
discontent which was brought about,
y que el descontento que se origina
by
por
the-
aquellos factores,
those factors which I described, the inequalities,
inflación,
inflation,
problemas de esta naturaleza
and
que
problems of
crearon
that sort
descontento.
which created discontent
Pero
among the
fíjense cómo
population.
ellos manejaron el problema.
But look how they handled the
Si en cualquier lugar
situation.
de Occidente
If in any place in the West
se produce
a situation
actividades como la que tuvieron lugar
had
en
taken
Pekín,
place like the ones in
lo
Beijing,
mismo en París, que en Londres,
be it Paris, London,
que en Estados Unidos,
United States,
que en España,
or
que
Spain,
eso
any of those countries,
no duran 24 horas.
they wouldn't have lasted 24 hours.
No duran 24
They
horas.
wouldn't have lasted 24 hours.
Van a pasar
The
semanas.
Chinese let weeks and weeks
Incluso
pass by.
los primeros soldados que me
Even the first soldiers that they sent to Tiananmen Square, they sent unarmed.
There's another subject I'd like to have your opinion on. The role of religion in recent years and religious leaders.
La religión tuvo en la vida del hombre
Then religion
una influencia tremenda.
had a great influence on the life of man. The politicians went to the oracles
Antes de
to,
tomar una decisión.
before making a decision.
Los generales los
The generals
consultaban
consulted the oracles
antes de las batallas.
before the battles. Now, it is obvious
Que en este momento
that at this point in time,
el movimiento religioso cobra
the religious movement is gaining strength.
por la fuerza social, por la fuerza política.
All the social forces and the political forces.
Ese no es un fenómeno particular,
That is not a phenomenon exclusive from our country.
no fue una cuestión de principio.
As a matter of principle,
Mantuvo un respeto
our revolution always maintain an absolute respect for religious beliefs as the right of all citizens. We elaborated on this idea that we still sustain of the alliance between Christians and Marxists.
What more do you think can a country like India do in promoting this South-South cooperation?
Yo creo que la India puede ser uno de los líderes de
I
ese
think that
movimiento.
India could be one of the leaders of such a movement. I think it is one of the countries with more moral authority, more political authority and prestige in order to play a role, an important, very important role in this effort for the development of cooperation, South-South cooperation, and let's say the South-South unity. But we could say that India has had a remarkable performance since its independence. And I feel, and of this I can surely talk, I feel that India is one of the great allies, more than an ally, a very important part in these efforts that our countries should undertake to face the challenges.
Would you be willing to invite them, Indian entrepreneurs and Indian businessmen, to help you with your development process?
Yes, we would be willing to accept Indian investments. If we accept them from the West, why not from Europe, why not from India? And I have great confidence in the Indian entrepreneurs because I see them very capable. I don't know how they are going to manage in many of those Eastern European countries. Building capitalism, how can they build capitalism without capitalists? That's a new, very interesting experience that we will all be watching. Let's see what happens.
When are you coming to India?
¿Cuándo viene a la India?
Bueno, sería un placer para mí.
It would be a pleasure for me to go to India.
También está lejos, no está
But it is
aquí.
still also far away.
How do you relax?
Talking to you, I relax talking to you.
Me relajo, descanso de los problemas.
I relax, I rest from the
También
problems.
conversando con los
Also
amigos.
talking to my friends here.
Hago ejercicio.
I exercise
Cuando puedo voy
when
a
I
nadar.
can. I like to go to the
Pero cada
ocean
vez
when I
puedo
can.
menos, nado,
Fishing?
¿Le gusta pescar?
pero por debajo del
Underwater fishing.
todavía lo practico.
I still practice
Exploración submarina.
scuba diving and underwater fishing.
Hace mucho tiempo trato de hacer ejercicio.
I try to exercise, though I do not have much time lately.
Rara vez veo una película, cada
I
vez
seldom watch a film.
leo
I read.
distintos
I
libros.
read a lot.
recently?
¿Qué has estado leyendo últimamente?
Como 3 libros,
About 3 books,
3 o 4 libros.
3 or 4 books.
Pero he estado repasando un poco.
But I
también
have been
cosas
going
históricas.
through history. And history
Nos ayuda a tener
helps us
una idea de la
to have an
importancia
idea
relativa de cada cosa.
of the relative importance of
Y nos
everything,
ayuda a ser modesto.
and it helps us to be
Nos
modest.
ayuda a ser modesto.
It helps us to be
Porque el
modest
hombre vive un segundo
because man lives just a second
y sin embargo se considera
and
que
passes away. However, man feels he's very important. Mainly the politicians feel that they are very important, and they live but a second of history's time. History teaches us to be modest.
And your study of history has led you to the conclusion that Adam Smith is only temporarily on top, that in the end, the good old Marx will prevail.
De que Adam Smith por el momento está por encima, pero que al final Marx y Engels serán los
Marx
que
y
predominen.
Engels prevalecerán. seguro.
Yes, you're right.
Bueno, me voy a levantar, no sé si estoy amarrado.
Sí, no,